Welcome back to our channel. Let's explore the secret war between Leslie, Carlton, Ted, Nicole, and Eva, where betrayal, love, and hatred are intertwined. Is Carlton really helping Leslie because of his ambition for power, or does he have a personal grudge against Ted that has not been revealed? Leslie had always believed that the moment Ted rejected her had shattered the order she felt was rightfully hers. It was not just a refusal of love, but the collapse of her ego, of the conviction that she was the only one strong enough, beautiful enough, and wise enough to stand beside a man like him. When Ted chose Nicole, Leslie did not see two ordinary people choosing each other. She saw an insult, saw herself replaced by a woman she deemed dull, lucky, and unworthy. From that wound, a warped kind of love began to grow, wrapped in the language of justice, truth, and a supposed desire to free Ted from a marriage that, in her eyes, was a mistake. The more she convinced herself, the deeper she sank into a sugar-coated revenge campaign, where every moral boundary was bent to fit her injured pride. Carlton appeared at exactly the right moment, either as the perfect tool or a dangerous ally. He was Ted's colleague, intelligent, cold, sharply perceptive about how the system worked and where trust in the workplace could be exploited, and more importantly, he saw in Leslie a fury he could weaponize. At first, he pretended to side with her, claiming to understand how it felt to be overlooked while others were trusted. But beneath that facade, Carlton nursed a quiet grudge against Ted for being sidelined from major projects, for always standing in Ted's shadow in the eyes of the executives, for the obsessive belief that his talents were never properly recognized. Carlton chose Leslie, or pretended to, letting her believe he had, because he needed someone emotionally extreme enough to accept every dirty scheme without hesitating, and Leslie, with her unresolved humiliation, fit perfectly. Together, they assembled fragments of suspicion, suggestive messages, staged encounters, and manufactured situations that forced Nicole to look at Ted with wavering eyes, pushing the couple into a defensive stance where they began doubting themselves and hurting each other. Eva stepped into this tragedy without ever being given a choice. She had grown up in the shadow of a strong mother, always in control, always insisting she knew what was best. For years, Eva tried to believe that Leslie's harshness was a twisted form of love, but still love. She had once or twice caught a glimpse of something too familiar, too intimate between her mother and Carlton during certain conversations, but she forced herself to dismiss it, telling herself it was just the social ease of people who moved in the same sphere of power. When she accidentally overheard the phone call between her mother and Carlton, heard the cold, calculated words, the strategy to make Nicole lose faith, to corner Ted and leave him confused and exposed, Eva realized that the quiet doubts that had haunted her were no longer a product of her imagination. She followed them in silence to the restaurant, sat in a hidden corner and watched the glances, the gestures, the half-complicit, half-intimate expressions, and the whole picture finally snapped into place. Her mother was not just a woman who had once loved Ted. She was turning that obsession into a deliberate campaign to destroy his life. That shock was not only a betrayal of Ted and Nicole. It was a betrayal of Eva herself, as she understood that all those years she had been nothing more than a detail in her mother's constructed world, an asset kept close to prove Leslie's perfection, rather than a person loved unconditionally. That truth filled Eva with anger and guilt. She could not stand by and watch her mother drag everyone into the abyss, but neither could she deny their blood ties. This conflict forced Eva into a position where she had to choose a side, confronting her with a cruel question. Did loving her mother mean staying silent about her mother's sins? When Eva came to Ted, she was not a gleeful accuser, but someone desperately trying to stop everything before it went beyond repair. At first, Ted reacted like a man who still believed the world around him retained some kind of order, who believed that, no matter how complicated, Leslie would never go as far as to sabotage his marriage. But when the faint discomfort of doubt refused to leave him, he decided to check the internal communication system, tracing messages, permissions, and access logs. The pieces of evidence that had seemed isolated slowly merged into a pattern he could not deny: Carlton's account. accessing secured sections at the exact time sensitive information leaked, encrypted exchanges with an external contact matching Leslie's number, each incident tethered to the same line. The weight of betrayal crashed down on Ted from both sides, from a man he had called a colleague, and from a woman tied to a past he had buried. What enraged him was not only their scheme to destroy him, but the realization that they had treated him as a pawn in their private crusade for validation. Ted chose not to drown in wounded pride. He laid everything bare to Nicole. That decision became the turning point. Instead of allowing doubt and hurt to keep feeding on them, they forced themselves to bring it all into the open, to face the pain, and to accept that their recent distance had given others the opening to strike. In that moment, they were no longer helpless victims, but two adults using the truth to heal and to reclaim control over their lives. Their decision to stand together moved them into a new role, not only protecting their love, but exposing those who had pushed them to the edge. While Ted and Nicole set their minds on striking back, Eva made one last attempt to talk to her mother, to salvage whatever humanity remained in Leslie. But Leslie had sunk too deep into her own narrative. She wrapped herself in the role of the victim, insisting that everything she did was justified because Ted owed her a life, because Nicole was the thief of her future, because Eva could not possibly grasp the depth of her pain. Cornered in her wounded vanity, Leslie no longer heard warnings, only defiance. She chose to continue because stopping would mean admitting she was wrong, admitting that years of obsession had been nothing more than a string of selfish mistakes. Sensing Leslie's growing inner conflict, Carlton only pushed harder. He knew the longer they waited, the greater the risk of exposure, and in his eyes, Leslie was nothing more than a piece on the board easily discarded. For him, Ted's collapse, Nicole's disgrace, and the company's turmoil were the real prizes, the chaos that would create a vacuum he could step into. Two people, one haunted by a past love, the other by pride, thought themselves allies, but were in truth exploiting each other. Neither realized that they were igniting explosives under the foundations of families and careers intertwined around them. When Ted finally chose to confront Carlton, he was no longer the defensive husband, but the man determined to drag a traitor into the light. The evidence he presented was so precise that Carlton's clever evasions had no room left to move. Access logs, tampered data, direct links to Leslie, doctored internal reports. Faced with the threat of losing everything, Carlton's mask slipped. He could no longer maintain his calm facade and revealed himself as a bitter man who believed the world owed him recognition. Instead of remorse, he only felt a deeper hatred at being defeated. His downfall was more than the collapse of one man's scheme. It was the inevitable result of treating loyalty as a toy and colleagues as stepping stones. He was forced to resign, stripped of the possibility of salvaging his reputation. But even that did not bring Ted satisfaction, because he knew the more dangerous force was still Leslie, the one emotionally entangled with all of them. Nicole chose to face Leslie not to claim a victory, but to sever the toxic spiral. Their confrontation was not loud, but it was a direct collision between two different kinds of women, one clinging to the past to justify hatred, the other determined to defend the present even at the cost of being hurt. Leslie was driven into a corner as each excuse she had used was stripped away, claiming she protected Ted while only seeking to possess him, claiming it was for her daughter while trampling Eva's feelings, claiming righteousness while quietly sabotaging others' work. When Eva stepped forward, not behind her mother, but alongside the truth, that moment shattered the entire illusion Leslie had built. Eva did not need to shout. Her choice to stand outside her mother's shadow was the cut that mattered. She saw the woman who had given her life become the source of poison for everyone, and understood that the only way to end it was to refuse to be her spiritual accomplice any longer. Caught between rage, bitterness, humiliation, and exhaustion, Leslie understood she had lost not only her scheme, but the one thing that could have saved her, her daughter's trust. She walked away in silence, not because she had grown, but because there were no justifications left strong enough to withstand Eva's disappointment and the united front of Ted and Nicole. Carlton disappeared from the picture with a cold resignation and a ruined name, but the damage he had helped cause remained a warning to everyone about how fragile their systems and their trust truly were. After surviving such a calculated assault, Ted and Nicole understood that their love was not invincible, yet it was precisely their choice to confront reality together, to choose truth over festering doubt, that made them stronger. They did not return to some fairy tale perfection, but learned to be more honest, more alert, not so easily manipulated. Eva kept the brief postcard in her mother's handwriting, with its cramped apology, like a fragment of the woman she could never completely hate. Could not erase what had been done, but it proved that somewhere, Leslie had recognized her own wrongs, even if too late. In a rare quiet afternoon, as Eva, Ted, and Nicole sat together, no one revisited every detail of the scheme, yet all three knew that their peace existed only because they had chosen to cut out the poison and accept the losses necessary to protect what remained whole. Somewhere else, Leslie was left to face the reality that her twisted love and wounded pride had pushed her to the opposite side of the very people she had tried to possess, until she herself became the one exiled from the game. And the only question left was not whether she would return, but if she ever did, would she come back as someone still using pain as a weapon, or as someone finally forced to learn how to love, without destroying everything around her? Does Ted, upon discovering his colleague's betrayal, feel remorse for having trusted Leslie too much, or does he just coldly fight back? Does Nicole truly forgive Ted, or does she just cooperate with him to take down Leslie and then decide her future later? Is Nicole, who finally confronts Leslie, acting out of justice or personal revenge? And when Leslie falls, does she truly feel victorious? And finally, who is the real victim in this whole story? Ted, the betrayed one, Nicole, the manipulated one, or Leslie herself, who cannot escape her own darkness? Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. All the content I make is just speculation and personal sharing. If you find the video interesting and useful, please support me with a like and leave a comment. If you have better ideas or more interesting speculations, please share them in the comments section for everyone to discuss. I appreciate all your contributions and support. Sincerely, thank you.